What's going on, everybody? Today I want to talk a little bit about what to do if your self-talk isn't working. Like if you're trying to engage in, positive thinking, you're trying to reframe your perspective, you're trying to improve your mood, but it's just not doing anything. I think this is something that I see happen to guys a lot. Whether they're trying to overcome a craving that they're dealing with, maybe it's just a negative emotion that they can't seem to shake. And they try all the stuff, they try visualization, they try talking to themselves, they try to think of a better perspective, but for some reason it's just not moving that lump of negativity that's caught inside their chest. And so here's a general framework, a set of points that will help you with this, okay? The first thing to understand is that your ability to shift an emotion is limited by how much you are actually accessing the core emotion. All right. So a lot of times, like, emotions operate in layers. So on the surface, you might feel like, oh, I'm a little annoyed about something. But if you go a little bit deeper, maybe you're actually angry. Maybe if you go a little deeper than that, it's maybe actually that you are afraid of something. Okay. Like, so for example, say someone at work, they dropped a negative comment about you. And at first you get a little annoyed. It's like, why would they say that? And you try to like brush it off, but it just keeps lingering there. It's like, I can't believe they said that. And you go a little deeper. It's like, oh, actually, I'm mad at this person. I'm mad at them for this. It's like, well, why are you mad at them? And you dig a little bit deeper into it. Maybe you realize, oh, you're afraid. You're afraid that they are, that them saying this kind of stuff is going to get you fired or get you in trouble with the boss or something like that. Okay. Now, here's the big point here is that we want to go as deep as we can. And I believe that almost all negative emotions, have the same core root, which is sadness. I believe sadness is the thing at the bottom because life is, in a lot of ways, it's tragic. We are a being designed to want infinite, perfect pleasure. Spiritual terminology is we are designed for heaven. Like that's what we crave. It's like if we can imagine something pleasurable, well, guess what? We can imagine something then immediately more pleasurable. And so that's what we're biologically wired toward. Get away from pain, get toward pleasure. But the way that the world works is that we're never actually going to do that. Life is always going to have suffering. And that is fundamentally a tragic thing. And so when we look at that, we take that reality on, what's the response? I think at the root, it's sadness. It's like, this is a tragedy. Right? Like this is the spiritual idea of the fall of man. It's a massive tragedy. But I believe that there is a redemption here that can occur. But what we have to do first is we always have to access that root sadness. Because if we're operating on one of the higher levels, then we're not going to have as much leverage because you're going to be further away from the core. And so anytime you're feeling a negative emotion, if you're operating on it on a level that's not the sadness root level, well, then you're just not going to be able to have as much influence. And so in any negative emotion, you want to figure out, what am I sad about here? What am I sad about? Okay, well, in the scenario we just talked about with the guy saying something at work, it's like, well, it could be a number of things. It's like maybe the sadness is that your job is not completely secure. That's really the issue. It's like you don't feel 100% secure in your job right now. Maybe it's that someone would say such a thing about you, just the fact that someone could see you so wrongly. Okay. Maybe it's that what they said is true and you're sad that it's true. It's like, oh shit, I am not as good as I thought I was. Or like, oh, that's a deficiency that I really didn't want to look at. And I do have it. Okay. So sadness is always the core negative emotion, I believe. There are some edge cases where you just might have bottomless rage, but in general, those things are just probably best treated as if they were like a little demon attacking you. Okay, and just you want to reject those kinds of things entirely. But that's usually a small subset. Almost always, if you drill down into it, you're going to find sadness. So here's what you want to do: if you're having trouble dealing with your emotions, trying to positive reframe, all that kind of stuff, Connect with the sadness first. Otherwise, the positive self-talk is almost like repressive. This is something I see with guys who read a lot of self-help books, who read a lot of stuff about mindset, who are really into positivity and that sort of thing. And this is something I saw in myself, where it was like anytime when I was younger, I would have like a negative emotion come up, I would like immediately try and like squish it with a reframe. Immediately try and like make myself feel like, oh, you don't need to feel bad. Think positive, blah blah blah. This is a growth opportunity. And I wouldn't even let myself feel the negative emotion. And this can kind of work a little bit, but eventually you're going to just hit a wall this way. And sometimes you might even find yourself falling into a funk that you can't seem to get yourself out of. It's because there's all this shit underneath that you've just been trying to squash down with positive thinking that's not actually being processed. So what you want to do is actually access the sadness. Let yourself feel whatever it is that you're sad about. And then while you are feeling it, you have to actually be feeling it, all right? It's this feeling in the chest, like this sinking feeling. I'll call it like this black hole. It's the sense of lack, whatever you want to call it, okay? When you are feeling it, that's making it like it's doing something where it's like connecting your prefrontal cortex to your limbic system. It's like creating some sort of synergy here where all of a sudden when you're actually feeling the emotion, you then have the ability to shift it. And so then what you want to do then is then offer yourself a better perspective, only while you are feeling the sadness. And so like for me, like dealing with a craving, all right, right now I'm working on improving my diet, all right, and I have a craving for sweets or something like that, a craving for donut, all right, and I'll feel like I'll just feel the craving at first, a little bit of frustration, a little bit of, that would be good. But then it's like, I work through it. It's like, okay, I'm not just frustrated. What I really am is I'm kind of sad right now. I'm sad that like, if I were to pursue the pleasure of the donut, then I would be going against my goals with the diet stuff, okay? And it's like, oh, that's not the situation I want. And there's a little part of me inside there that's sad about it. And instead of telling that part that it's dumb and shut up, I'll let myself actually feel it, okay? Sink down into it. And then what I do is like, well, all right, can I think of any way of viewing this situation where I actually not only am I okay, but I'm actually thriving? And can I imagine that? Yeah, I can imagine myself like having something else other than a donut, or just simply imagining like, well, 15 minutes in the future, I'm not going to care and I can move on with the rest of my day. I can imagine myself like having a better physique or whatever it is, right? Like if you can come up with some believable scenario where that sadness actually doesn't exist anymore, like it's just a better perspective where, oh, if I look at it like that, that's not an issue. Like going back to that work example, if your root sadness is that your job is not secure, well, can you imagine a scenario where that's okay? Maybe it's like, well, this would be an opportunity for me to work on a different career path, go a different way with my career. Maybe this is an opportunity for me to step up at work, because maybe I would like to work a little harder. I would like to be a little bit more diligent in what I'm bringing to the table, right? And you can actually if you do that kind of work from the place of already feeling the sadness, well, guess what? It's just going to land so much harder. It's going to actually create a much more powerful shift inside of you. And so this is the general point here today is like, you got to go to the core, and the core thing's always going to be sadness. And then you got to tell yourself a reason why, well, I don't really need to be sad about this because I can look at it like this, or I can do that, or whatever. You have to use your imagination. And this imagining of a new way of doing things, that kind of creates like a new neurological container. It's like we plug into this old neurological container where all the sadness is, and it's like this is where all the negative energy is coming from. And then once we're in it, it's activated, the energy is like here moving, and then we can say, oh, how about you just move over into this container instead? And it will. But if you don't actually access the sadness, then it won't make that shift and you won't get the mood transformation. So I could talk about this stuff for days, and I kind of actually have a whole course on it. This is my Reforged Man course. So if you're having trouble shifting cravings, particularly around quitting porn and that sort of thing, well then Reforged Man is exactly what you want, and you can only get that by joining the Self-Mastery Club. So you can check out the Self-Mastery Club by clicking in the link, and I will see you guys in the next one. Ooh, yeah.